In our everyday lives, we look at people and we usually are struck by their physical appearance or certain qualifications or characteristics. That's why when we look at people, we usually say, he is handsome, or she is beautiful, or he is tall, he is rich, he is an architect, she is a doctor, and so on. We also see people and define them as weak or crippled or blind or old or poor and so on. This is true of the human assessment because we assess and evaluate with our senses. However, the scriptures of today's liturgy force us to ask the question, how does God see us? And how does God help us to see? First reading says that human beings look at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. This first reading, Samuel was sent to the house of Jesse to anoint one of his sons, the king of Israel. In the eyes of Samuel, the one who he was about to anoint king had to be handsome, tall, huge, brave, and appealing to human eyes. Little wonder he was impressed by Eliab's appearance, Jesse's oldest son. Eliab was tall, huge, brave, and a handsome man. Samuel immediately set out to anoint him king, but God objected. Neither Eliab nor the other 7 brothers that came before Samuel was qualified to be anointed king, even though that they looked physically impressive. Meanwhile, David, who was the youngest son of Jesse, was not around as this drama played out. He was in the fields tending to his father's sheep. By human reckoning, he was rather too young, perhaps too weak, ruddy, inept to become king. But God instructed Samuel to summon David and anoint him king of Israel. God does not see as human beings see. In the eyes of men and women, we may be considered sinners, but in God's eyes, we are seen as people saved by grace. In the eyes of people, we may be reckoned as sick and down and out, but in the eyes of God, we are precious. When people see us from the optics of nationality, race, gender, and other qualifications, God sees us as his sons and daughters. As such, God does not see us as Canadian, American, African, European, Muslim, or Christian. God sees us as his children. This is a message of hope for all whom society reckons us wanting. This message is simply to let us know how special we are in God's eyes. Furthermore, this message is for all those who are in the habit of looking down on others because of their social class, academic qualifications, wretched background, or nationality. Each and every one of us bears God's image, and God looks at the heart. God shows us how to see. The gospel story of the man born blind highlights that God does care for each person. The condition of the blind man in today's gospel was hopeless. He's not just blind, he was born blind. So all he had seen from birth was darkness. He was also poor and wretched. He was a beggar abandoned by family and friends. He was most probably seen as a man under a curse. While society saw him as a wretch and under a curse, Jesus saw him in him the image of God, a person deserving of God's attention and love. As such, Jesus did not hesitate to show him love and kindness, but he healed his blindness. As the story unfolds, Jesus not only restored his physical sight, he also restored his spiritual sight. Little by little, Jesus progressively opened his inner eyes, and he was brought to faith. In the midst of harassment and questioning and disbelief, he is convinced of one matter. "One thing that I know," the blind man says, "though I was blind, now I see." Jesus healed him so he could see physically, and gradually helped him to see spiritually, encountering Jesus and ultimately worshiping the Lord as Messiah. But seeing Jesus, having the vision he gives, isn't always smooth sailing. We often have to navigate the waters of contrary opinions and hostilities that we encounter because of our vision and our faith. We may even have to become defenders of Jesus against some pretty strong opinions, just as the man did after his cure. Once the former blind man professes his faith in Jesus, everything will change for him. He will see himself and the world around him differently with the eyes of a disciple. Obviously, the evangelist wants to focus our attention on the gradual way of recognizing and seeing Jesus as the light of the world. In fact, it is the same process that believers always follow. His encounter with Jesus revealed to him that Jesus was the Messiah. For the blind man, Jesus is the light of the world that dispels the gloom of hatred, slander, and injustice. We all need Jesus to help us see him as the light of God, to be healed of our spiritual blindness like that of the scribes and Pharisees. Paul, in the second reading, admonishes us not to live in the dark anymore, but to live as children of the light. As the story unfolds, we become aware of the reality of blindness. The blind man sees more than the religious leaders in the sense that he had faith in Jesus. We must not think that blindness is an illness that affects the eyes only. There are many forms of blindness besides physical blindness. Selfishness blinds us to the needs of others. Insensitivity blinds us to the hurt that we may be causing. Snobbery blinds us to the equal dignity of others. Pride blinds us to our own faults. Prejudice blinds us to the truth. Hurry blinds us to the world around us. Materialism blinds us to spiritual values. It is not only the eyes that we see, but we see with the mind and the heart and the imagination. It is often said that the greatest tragedy is not to be born blind, but to have eyes and fail to see. Or even worse, to have eyes and refuse to see, as in the situation with the Pharisees. Are there areas in our lives, in our families, in our church, in our world, in our culture, that need serious healing, restoration, and reformation because of our blind spots? Here at Christ the King, you have been reflecting on your parish's vision statement, especially the phrase, "joyfully share his love." Just as the man born blind truly encountered Jesus and saw him as the Son of Man, so we are invited to encounter Jesus and experience the joy of knowing the Lord's care and love and healing for each one of us. This brings tremendous, deep-seated joy, a joy that can never be taken away from us. As we continue along the way, guided by the Holy Spirit, we will come to deeper understandings of who Jesus is for us right now. Those who have been enlightened by Christ can never again see themselves and their lives in the same light as before. Everything is illuminated with an inner radiance that builds trust in our hearts. Faith helps us to find our way through the chaos, confusion, and darkness of our world. May the openness of the man born blind help us in our blindness and inspire us in our journey of faith.